Ancient China perfected inventions that seem impossible for their time. The story we know is just the surface, hiding layers of secrets so profound they could change our understanding of history itself. By the end of this journey, you will discover 25 hidden truths that reveal a civilization far more advanced and mysterious than any textbook suggests. We will uncover lost sciences, from alchemical quests for immortality to earthquake detectors that worked without modern sensors. We will explore military machines that fired like early machine guns and medical practices that still baffle experts today. How did a 2,000-year-old sword remain untarnished? And what silent city lies perfectly preserved beneath a lake? What is the one ancient philosophy that teaches the secret of effortless power? Prepare to have everything you thought you knew about the ancient world completely overturned. What does true innovation look like when it is hidden for centuries? Our journey into the deepest secrets begins not with a grand invention, but with a profound human desire. For centuries, the most brilliant minds in ancient China were consumed by a single, tantalizing quest. They sought the secret to immortality itself. This was the world of Chinese alchemy, a practice so much richer and more complex than the simple idea of turning lead into gold. It was a complete philosophy of transformation divided into two parallel paths. The first path was known as Weiden, or external alchemy. Practitioners built elaborate laboratories, heating and mixing minerals in complex sequences within cauldrons. They believed that by replicating the cosmic processes of creation, they could distill an elixir of life. These potions were often recipes for disaster, containing substances we now know as deadly poisons like mercury and lead. Yet, in their meticulous notes on the reactions of these materials, these alchemists were unknowingly laying the very foundations of chemistry. Their careful observations of how substances changed with heat and combination became the first steps toward a science of matter. The most famous of these seekers was a man named Ji Hong, a scholar and mystic of the 4th century. He wrote extensively on elixir recipes and spiritual practices, convinced that purity of body and mind was the key to transcending mortal limits. In one of history's great ironic twists, it was within the smoky confines of these alchemical labs, while searching for eternal life, that they stumbled upon a formula for sudden, violent death. The mixture of sulfur, saltpeter, and charcoal, a recipe sometimes noted for its fiery properties, would eventually become known as gunpowder. The quest for immortality accidentally gave birth to a force that would reshape warfare forever. But the second path of alchemy, Needon, or internal alchemy, pursued a different kind of transformation. Instead of cauldrons and elixirs, practitioners used their own bodies as the laboratory. They focused on cultivating and refining the life force, or Kai, that flows through everyone. Through controlled breathing, meditation, and precise physical movements, they aimed to purify this energy, circulating it to nourish the spirit and achieve a state of spiritual immortality. This internal work had a monumental and lasting impact. It became deeply woven into the fabric of traditional Chinese medicine, influencing practices like acupuncture and qigong, which are still used worldwide today for health and balance. So the first great secret is this duality. The ancient Chinese search for eternal life was not a foolish dream, but a powerful engine for discovery. It drove innovation in practical chemistry, led to a world-changing accidental invention, and fostered a holistic system of health that connects the body and spirit. Their failure to find physical immortality was, in truth, a spectacular success, gifting the world with new sciences and a timeless philosophy of inner cultivation. That same drive for permanence and order manifested in a project of staggering ambition, one that turned clay and fire into an eternal god. The terracotta army, discovered by farmers in the 1970s, is more than a collection of statues. It is a frozen moment of imperial power, a silent legion of over 8,000 life-sized soldiers, chariots, and horses, each one an individual. But the true secret lies not just in their existence, but in how they were made. Creating such an army with such uniformity and yet such individuality required a manufacturing system centuries ahead of its time. It was a feat of mass production that would not be seen again on such a scale until the Industrial Revolution. The ancient artisans did not sculpt each figure from scratch. Instead, they used a brilliant modular system. They created a library of standardized molds for the basic body parts: heads, torsos, arms, and legs. Soldiers were assembled from these prefabricated components, much like assembling a figure from a kit. This assembly line approach allowed for rapid production. But here is where the artistry truly shines. After the basic form was pieced together, teams of skilled craftsmen went to work adding the details that make every soldier unique. They applied fresh clay to sculpt distinct facial features, from high cheekbones to thoughtful expressions. They carved intricate hairstyles and added realistic armor plates, belts, and tassels. No two faces in the entire army are exactly alike. This combination of efficient mass production and handcrafted customization is a secret of logistics and artistry that still impresses engineers today. Then came the even greater challenge: fire. Firing a life-sized clay sculpture is incredibly difficult. Uneven heating causes cracks and explosions. The Qin dynasty potters solved this with advanced kiln technology and profound knowledge of their materials. They built massive, well-insulated kilns, likely firing the figures at a relatively low temperature over a long period to ensure even heat distribution. They also engineered the sculptures themselves to be hollow, with walls of consistent thickness, and included carefully placed air vents to allow steam and gases to escape during the firing process. This prevented the buildup of pressure that would shatter the clay. Each soldier that emerged intact from the kiln was a triumph of thermal science, but the terracotta army was not always the muted earthen color we see today. When they were buried, they were breathtakingly lifelike, painted in vibrant pigments of red, green, purple, and gold. The secret of these paints, however, became a tragedy of preservation. The pigments were bound with organic materials like egg or animal glue. For over 2,000 years, protected in the cool, dark, stable environment of the tomb, they remained pristine. But upon exposure to modern air and light, the delicate paint layers curled and flaked off in minutes, sometimes turning to dust before the archaeologist's eyes. This fading revealed a final, poignant secret: the army's intended glory. Today, a major focus of the ongoing work at the site is not just excavation but preservation. Scientists use sophisticated techniques like polyethylene glycol sprays to stabilize the remaining pigments the moment a new figure is uncovered. They are literally racing against time to save the original colors of history. So the second secret is one of organized genius. The terracotta army stands as a testament to a civilization that mastered the balance between scale and detail, between industrial process and artistic soul, creating an everlasting monument through a combination of managerial brilliance, chemical understanding, and heartbreakingly fragile beauty. While the terracotta army stood as silent guardians of the dead, another brilliant mind was building a device to protect the living from the unpredictable fury of the earth. In the year 132, during the Han Dynasty, the court astronomer and engineer Zhang Heng presented the emperor with an object of stunning beauty and profound mystery. It was a large, ornate bronze vessel nearly 6 feet across. Encircling its top were 8 dragon heads, each gazing in a cardinal or intercardinal direction. Below each dragon, with its mouth open in anticipation, sat a bronze toad. This was not a ceremonial ornament. It was the world's first seismoscope, a machine designed to detect earthquakes from hundreds of miles away. The concept was almost magical. When the earth trembled in a distant province, the dragon facing that direction would release a heavy bronze ball from its jaws. The ball would clatter into the mouth of the waiting toad below with a loud metallic clang, announcing both the event and its direction. For a government that saw natural disasters as signs of heavenly displeasure, this was more than a scientific instrument. It was a vital tool of statecraft and legitimacy, allowing the imperial court to demonstrate its cosmic awareness and send aid to affected regions with startling speed, long before messengers on horseback could arrive. But how did it work? Zhang Heng's original writings on the internal mechanism were lost, leaving a 2,000-year-old puzzle for modern engineers to solve. The most widely accepted theory is one of elegant simplicity. Inside the sealed vessel, experts believe, was a carefully balanced inverted pendulum. Think of a heavy mass hanging from a pivot point free to swing. When seismic waves from a distant quake reached the device, they would cause the vessel to shift slightly. The inertia of the suspended mass, however, would make it lag behind this motion, effectively swinging in relation to the vessel's walls. This swing would then trip a delicate lever or latch system connected to just one of the 8 dragon mechanisms. That specific lever would open the jaws of the dragon facing the quake's epicenter, releasing its ball. The design was likely sensitive enough to filter out the local vibrations of everyday life, responding only to the distinct rolling waves of a true earthquake. The genius was in its passivity. It required no external power, only an understanding of physics so advanced it feels out of place in the ancient world. Modern attempts to recreate a working model have met with mixed success, proving the concept is sound, but the precise craftsmanship required was extraordinary. The third secret, then, is one of predictive grace. Zhang Heng's seismoscope embodies a civilization that viewed the cosmos as a readable text. It was a marriage of artistic splendor and mechanical ingenuity, a silent watcher that gave voice to the tremors of the earth, transforming fear into knowledge and consolidating an empire's power through the elegant application of a profound and still not fully understood principle. That same mastery of materials and alchemy of earth and fire found its most lethal and beautiful expression not in a guardian but in a weapon. In the damp soil of a tomb from the spring and autumn period, a sword lay waiting for over 2,000 years. When archaeologists unearthed it in 1965, they expected a corroded relic. What they pulled from its scabbard defied all expectation. The sword of Gaojuan gleamed as if forged yesterday, its surface free of rust, its blade still wickedly sharp enough to cut a stack of paper with a whisper. This was not luck. It was the product of a metallurgical science so advanced it seems to defy the relentless march of time. The secret of its preservation lies in a perfect storm of chemistry and craftsmanship. Ancient Chinese metallurgists were not simply mixing copper and tin to make bronze. They were master chefs of alloy, carefully balancing recipes for specific properties. Analysis suggests the Gaojuan sword contains a meticulously controlled amount of tin, likely around 20%. Tin makes bronze harder and gives a sharper edge, but too much makes the metal brittle. They found the perfect equilibrium. More astonishing is the sword's resistance to corrosion. The soil of China is not kind to metal, yet a protective layer, a patina, formed on the blade. This was not ordinary rust. Researchers believe it is a stable, glass-like layer rich in chromium compounds or a sulfur-based patina, a shield that actively prevented further decay. Whether this was a deliberate treatment or a miraculous result of the specific burial conditions is debated, but the effect is undeniable, a 2-millennia-old anti-corrosion coating. Then there is the artistry that elevates this from a tool to a treasure. Running down the center of the blade is an intricate, geometric pattern of dark rhombic shapes, a stunning contrast against the lighter bronze. This was not merely decoration. Achieving this effect required a technique of breathtaking complexity, possibly a form of differential etching. artisans may have treated the blade with a resistant material in that precise pattern, then exposed the whole sword to a corrosive agent. The untreated metal would be eaten away slightly, leaving the protected rhombuses standing in subtle relief. Another theory suggests an even more difficult process of inlaying the pattern with a different alloy, like one with higher tin content. This created a blade with varying hardness, a practical feature that could absorb shock and prevent shattering. But in the worldview of its creators, this patterning held a deeper power. The rhombic design, often called a dark moon pattern, was believed to have a spiritual function. It was thought to confuse and dispel evil spirits, making the sword a weapon for both the physical and the supernatural realms. The fourth secret, therefore, is one of transcendent skill. The Sword of Goujian is a silent manifesto from the spring and autumn period, a time of warring states and fierce innovation. It proclaims a society where smiths were not just laborers, but material scientists and spiritual artists. They understood alloy chemistry on an intuitive level, developed surface treatments that fought entropy itself, and wielded techniques so refined we struggle to replicate them today. This single artifact shatters our timeline of technological progress, proving that a blade could be forged not just to conquer an enemy, but to conquer time. While the Sword of Goujian defied time through chemistry, another entire city surrendered to the water, achieving a different kind of immortality. Deep beneath the serene surface of Qingdao Lake, a man-made reservoir known as Thousand Island Lake, lies a secret that was deliberately drowned and then forgotten. This is the sunken city of Shicheng, or Lion City, a sprawling metropolis from the Ming and Qing dynasties that now rests in a silent, aquatic slumber 40 meters below. Its story is a poignant collision of ancient heritage and modern ambition. In 1959, the Chinese government made a monumental decision to meet the energy needs of a growing nation. They built a massive hydroelectric dam on the Xinan River, a project that would create a vast reservoir and generate power for the region. The valley, home to the centuries-old cities of Shicheng and Hicheng, was chosen to be flooded. Nearly 300,000 people were relocated from their ancestral homes. As the waters steadily rose, they swallowed temples, archways, and homes, sealing an entire chapter of history under a new, placid lake. For decades, Lion City existed only in old legends and the memories of displaced families, a ghost story written in water. Then, in 2001, explorers rediscovered it. What they found was not a ruin, but a time capsule of breathtaking preservation. The same water that submerged the city became its perfect protector. The cold, dark, and remarkably still environment at the bottom of the lake lacks the oxygen and sunlight that cause wood to rot and stone to erode. Free from the destructive forces of wind, rain, and modern pollution, the city was frozen in a moment from the 1950s, the instant the floodgates closed. Divers who descend into this silent world are met with a sight that seems impossible. They glide over intact city walls and through grand, ornate archways adorned with intricate stone carvings of lions, dragons, and phoenixes, their details still crisply defined. They pass by majestic stone statues standing sentinel as if still guarding the streets. Most astonishing are the wooden structures from beams to staircases, which remain solid, their joinery and craftsmanship perfectly visible. Even the wooden eaves of ancient temples swayed gently with the current, preserved as if they were built yesterday. This underwater museum offers an unparalleled, pure glimpse into ancient Chinese urban planning and daily life. Unlike historical sites on land, which are often rebuilt, restored, or encroached upon by modern development, Shicheng is perfectly intact. Its layout reveals the sophisticated logic of a traditional Chinese city, with its ceremonial gates, main thoroughfares, and residential districts. Archaeologists can study the original placement of buildings, the flow of water through ancient channels, and the architectural styles exactly as they were lived in, without centuries of layered alterations. The fifth secret, then, is one of accidental perfection. The sunken city of Shicheng is a monument to both loss and discovery. A decision for progress inadvertently created the ideal conditions for preservation, gifting the future with a snapshot of imperial China so pristine it feels like walking through a dream. It asks us a haunting question: what other wonders have we buried, and what truths might they reveal when we finally dare to look? The silent city beneath the lake shows a civilization capable of monumental, controlled creation. But that same ambition could also set sail for the very edges of the known world. In the early 15th century, while Europe was still emerging from the Middle Ages, the Ming dynasty launched a project of maritime exploration that remains almost incomprehensible in its scale. This was the treasure fleet of Admiral Zheng He, a man who commanded not a handful of ships but a veritable floating city of the sea. His largest vessels, the legendary treasure ships, were reported to be over 400 feet long. To put that in perspective, Christopher Columbus's flagship, the Santa Maria, was barely 80 feet from stem to stern. Zheng He's flagship was 5 times longer, a colossal wooden palace that could have carried the entire Santa Maria on its deck. The fleet itself was a staggering armada, sometimes comprising over 300 ships of various types, carrying nearly 30,000 sailors, soldiers, diplomats, and merchants. This was not a voyage of desperate exploration. It was a deliberate, majestic projection of imperial power across the waves. Such a feat was only possible because of naval engineering secrets far ahead of their time. The Chinese shipwrights had mastered the construction of watertight bulkhead compartments. They built walls across the interior of the hull, creating separate, sealed sections. If the ship's hull was punctured in a storm or a battle, only one compartment would flood, allowing the vessel to stay afloat and reach port for repairs. This brilliant safety feature would not become standard in European shipbuilding for centuries. They also employed massive, balanced sternpost rudders that could be raised or lowered depending on the depth of the water, giving the gigantic ships remarkable maneuverability. Combined with advanced understanding of monsoon winds and detailed navigational charts, these technological marvels turned the Indian Ocean into a Ming dynasty highway. But why send such a fleet? The official history speaks of spreading the glory of the Ming Emperor and collecting tribute from distant lands. Indeed, the voyages were diplomatic and economic masterstrokes. They established a vast network of tributary relationships where foreign rulers would acknowledge Ming supremacy in exchange for lucrative trade privileges and magnificent gifts. The fleet returned with exotic goods like giraffes from Africa, which were seen as auspicious mythical creatures, and spices, gems, and knowledge that enriched the empire. Yet, many historians believe there was a deeper, more secret motive. The emperor who sponsored Zheng He had seized the throne in a coup. Sending such an unmatched fleet to every corner of the ocean was a powerful statement to both foreign kingdoms and domestic rivals, a demonstration of unchallengeable authority and wealth that legitimized his rule. The voyages showcased a China that was open, confident, and the undisputed center of the world. Then, suddenly, it all stopped. After the 7th voyage, the expeditions were cancelled, the great ships left to rot, and the records largely destroyed. A new emperor, focused on internal threats and the northern frontier, saw the voyages as a wasteful extravagance. The greatest fleet the world had ever seen was deliberately scuttled by politics. This abrupt end fuels the most tantalizing secrets of all. With ships capable of such long-range travel, where did Zheng He's fleet actually go? The meticulously kept logs and charts were lost, leaving room for speculation that borders on legend. Some theories, based on interpretations of ancient maps and fragmentary accounts, suggest the Ming fleets may have sailed far beyond the Indian Ocean. They propose that Chinese explorers could have rounded the southern tip of Africa decades before the Portuguese, or even crossed the Pacific to reach the Americas long before Columbus. There are claims of Asian artifacts found in pre-Columbian sites and stories of mysterious shipwrecks on distant coasts. While mainstream scholarship demands more concrete evidence, the possibility remains a captivating historical mystery. The sixth secret is therefore one of breathtaking capability and profound loss. Zheng He's treasure fleet represents a pivotal road not taken. It reveals a China that possessed the technology, the organizational skill, and the courage to dominate the age of exploration, only to turn inward and abandon the seas. The silent fate of those great ships asks us a haunting question: how might world history have changed if those sails had never been furled? The decision to abandon the seas turned China's formidable ingenuity inward toward a more intimate frontier, the human body itself. And nowhere is this exploration more vividly preserved than in a tomb that should not exist. In 1972, in the city of Changsha, workers digging an air raid shelter stumbled upon a burial chamber sealed for over 2,100 years. Inside, they found the body of a noblewoman known as Lady Di. Her condition was nothing short of miraculous. Her skin was still soft and supple, her joints movable, her organs intact, and even the blood in her veins remained in a liquid state. She was so perfectly preserved that pathologists could perform an autopsy and determine her cause of death, a heart attack likely brought on by years of poor diet and a sedentary lifestyle. But the true secrets of Mawangdui were not just in the body, but in the library buried with her. Among the silks and lacquerware were medical manuscripts written on silk, texts that had avoided decay just as she had, and they reveal a world of healing that is both shockingly bizarre and startlingly sophisticated. These texts outline medical procedures that make modern readers gasp. They describe in careful detail the practice of trepanation, the drilling of a hole into the human skull. In ancient China, this was not a random act of violence, but a calculated surgical intervention. The manuscripts suggest it was used to treat conditions we would recognize today, such as seizures, severe headaches, or pressure from head injuries. The fact that they recorded this procedure indicates not only that it was performed, but that there was an accumulated knowledge about survival rates, surgical aftercare, and the management of pain and infection. This was brain surgery over 2 millennia ago. The core of this medical philosophy, however, was not focused on invasive cuts but on an invisible map. The manuscripts from Mawangdui are some of the earliest existing documents to describe in detail the concept of the meridian system, the pathways through which life energy, or Kai, was believed to flow. They charted these channels across the body, linking them to specific organs and functions. A blockage or imbalance in this flow was seen as the root cause of disease. This led to diagnostic methods that seem strange to modern eyes. Physicians would meticulously examine the color and quality of a patient's urine, their complexion, the tone of their voice, and even the smell of their breath, correlating each sign to the state of the internal meridians and organs. Their prescriptions were a blend of the practical and the profoundly exotic. Recipes called for herbs we still use today, like ginger for digestion or cinnamon for circulation, mixed with ingredients that sound like a wizard's shopping list. A remedy might include powdered jade, considered a substance of purity and permanence, or involve the ashes of a particular insect or a broth made from rare minerals. The logic was symbolic and holistic. If a patient was suffering from a brittle condition like weak bones, a physician might prescribe a substance perceived as unyielding like dragon bone, which was often fossilized dinosaur bone. The goal was to transfer that quality of strength into the patient's own body through consumption. What emerges from these silk pages is not primitive superstition, but a complex, fully realized medical system. It seamlessly combined shamanistic rituals to drive away evil spirits with remarkably precise anatomical observations and a vast, tested knowledge of pharmacology. They understood the connection between pulse and heart health. They cataloged diseases with specific symptoms, and they approached the patient as an entire ecosystem of body, energy, and spirit. The seventh secret is this duality. The medicine of Mawangdui was a science of symbolism and substance, where drilling a hole in the skull and brewing a tea of mystical herbs were both considered valid, logical steps on the same path to healing. It reveals a civilization that looked at the human form and saw not just flesh and bone, but a landscape of flowing energy, one they dared to chart and treat with a blend of courage, creativity, and keen observation that continues to resonate and mystify even now. While the physicians of Mawangdui were mapping the body's hidden energies, another group of scholars was deciphering a different kind of map entirely, one written in the universal language of numbers. Their textbook was not a medical scroll, but a formidable compendium known as the 9 Chapters on the Mathematical Art. Compiled during the Han Dynasty, this was not a theoretical exercise for philosophers. It was the operating manual for running an empire, a collection of cryptographic secrets disguised as mundane problems about grain, land, and labor. Within its pages lay mathematical concepts so advanced they would not be formally recognized in the West for over 1,000 years. The true genius of the 9 chapters was its systematic approach to the messy, real-world calculations of statecraft. Take, for example, the problem of distributing grain from different granaries, each with a different quality and price. This is a classic system of linear equations, a headache for any administrator. The text outlines a method for solving these problems using a tabular arrangement of numbers, manipulating them in a series of prescribed steps. To a modern eye, this procedure is unmistakably matrix algebra, a cornerstone of higher mathematics, engineering, and computer science, being practiced in ancient China to ensure fair taxation and efficient logistics. They were building empires with mathematical tools the rest of the world had yet to dream of. Their pursuit of precision extended to the very shape of the heavens and earth. One chapter is devoted to geometry, and it is here we find their work on pi. Using a method of calculating the area of a circle by inscribing polygons with more and more sides, they achieved a value for pi of 3.1416, a stunningly accurate figure for the era. This was not abstract number crunching. This precision was vital for the grand projects that defined Chinese civilization. Accurate pi meant engineers could correctly calculate the volume of earth to move for a canal, the amount of timber needed for a palace roof, or the dimensions of an astronomical instrument. The text also details a clever technique called the rule of double false position, a method for solving complex problems through intelligent guesswork and adjustment. Imagine a government official needs to determine how many laborers are required to build a certain length of wall in a set number of days, given varying work rates. The method in the 9 chapters allows him to plug in 2 reasonable guesses, see how far off each result is, and then use those errors to triangulate the exact correct answer. It is a beautifully pragmatic form of algebra. This is the 8th secret, the hidden engine of bureaucracy. The 9 chapters was a state secret because mathematics was power. The ability to measure land accurately meant fair taxation, which filled the imperial coffers. The skill to calculate volumes and slopes meant successful irrigation canals, which fed the population. The knowledge to model celestial motions meant an accurate calendar, which legitimized the emperor's rule as the son of heaven. This mathematical compendium was, in essence, the software that ran one of the world's most sophisticated ancient governments, its algorithms etched on bamboo strips directing the flow of grain, the movement of armies, and the rhythm of the seasons themselves. But mathematics, for all its power, is a language of pure abstraction. To truly know a civilization, we must hear its own voice spoken in its own words. This brings us to a mystery that haunts the very foundations of Chinese history, a silent void where a voice should be. For all the grandeur of the Shang dynasty with its oracle bone script, Chinese tradition speaks of an earlier, more foundational era, the Xia dynasty. It is described in ancient texts as the glorious first dynasty, the origin of Chinese kingship and flood control, ruled by sage kings like Yu the Great. Yet for centuries it has dwelled in the realm of legend, its existence unproven by any decipherable written record. The search for its voice is the hunt for the lost language of the Xia. The most tantalizing clues come from a place called Erletu. Discovered in central China, Erletu is a vast, sophisticated archaeological site dating to precisely the period when the Xia dynasty is said to have flourished. It has everything you would expect from a dynastic capital: grand palaces on raised rammed earth platforms, elite tombs with rich grave goods, and workshops for bronze casting that show a society of advanced organization and wealth. But where are its words scattered among the pottery shards and artifacts? Archaeologists have found something perplexing. They have uncovered over 20 distinct symbols etched or painted onto ceramic vessels and other objects. These are not random scratches, they are recurring, deliberate marks, some resembling simple pictographs of eyes, arrows, or plants. To some scholars, these are sparks in the darkness, the first flickers of a writing system. They argue these marks could be clan insignias, numerical tallies, or even the earliest attempts at phonetic notation, a proto-script used by a burgeoning administration to mark ownership or contents. If true, these humble potter's marks are the sacred precursors to the magnificent oracle bone script, the missing link in the evolution of Chinese writing. Other experts, however, urge extreme caution. They point out that many ancient cultures made marks on pottery for decorative or practical purposes without it constituting a true writing system. A mark might simply identify the potter who made it, or denote the vessel's capacity without conveying language. The debate is fierce and fundamental because the stakes could not be higher. If these symbols from Erletu can be proven to be a coherent script, it would be a discovery to shake history. It would provide the long-sought physical evidence to pull the Xia dynasty from the shadows of myth into the light of verified history. Suddenly, the stories of Yu the Great taming the floods would not just be folklore, but potentially the recorded memory of a real, monumental engineering feat. We could learn their laws, their treaties, their poetry, and their names. We could hear their own account of how a civilization began. This is why the lost script of the Xia is the ultimate holy grail for historians. It is a locked door standing between us and the very first chapter of China's story. Every enigmatic symbol from Erletu is a potential key, and until one fits, the first dynasty remains a magnificent, silent silhouette, its secrets kept by the very marks we cannot yet read. The search for a lost language reveals a civilization yearning to record its triumphs, but some of their greatest triumphs were written not in words but in water and stone. While the Xia dynasty may have battled floods, a later kingdom mastered them with a solution of breathtaking elegance. In the 3rd century before the Common Era, in the rugged Sichuan basin, a governor named Lai Bing faced a crisis that threatened the very survival of the Qin state. The Min River, swollen by mountain snowmelt, would regularly burst its banks with catastrophic floods, only to then retreat and leave the plains parched by drought. The people were trapped in a cycle of famine and despair. Lai Bing's mandate from his king was not to conquer a rival army, but to conquer the river itself. What he and his son created was the Duzhongyan irrigation system, a hydrological masterpiece that did not just tame the Min River, but persuaded it to work for them. Its secret was a profound understanding of nature's own logic, and it still functions perfectly today, over 2,200 years later. The genius of Duzhongyan lies in its 3 core components, each performing a specific, automatic function without a single moving part or modern control mechanism. The first is the Yuzui, or fish mouth levee. This is a man-made island shaped like a fish's head that sits directly in the middle of the river's flow. It doesn't block the water, it gently guides it. The fish mouth naturally splits the river into 2 channels, an inner channel and an outer channel. Based on the simple principles of hydrology, about 60% of the water, which carries the heavier silt, is diverted into the outer channel and continues down the main river. The remaining 40%, the clearer water, flows into the inner channel, which is the intake for the entire irrigation network. This simple, static structure performs a vital filtering job every second of every day. The second component is the phasian, or flying sand spillway. This is a carefully calibrated opening between the inner and outer channels. As the clear water enters the inner channel, it still carries some sediment. The design of the spillway uses the river's own energy to solve this problem. During the high water season, when the flow increases, the pressure builds in the inner channel. This pressure forces the excess water, along with the suspended silt, to literally fly up and over the low barrier of the spillway, cascading back into the outer, silt-heavy channel to be carried away. It is a self-cleaning mechanism, an automatic silt flusher powered entirely by the current it regulates. Finally, there is the Bayapinku, or bottleneck channel. This is a narrow, carved passage through a mountain that acts as the final regulator. It functions like the neck of a bottle, creating a natural bottleneck that controls the volume of water entering the vast, fan-like network of irrigation canals that feed the Chengdu Plains. It ensures a steady, manageable flow regardless of the season, preventing the system from being overwhelmed. The result was a transformation so complete it redefined a region. The once volatile Sichuan Basin became the land of abundance, a fertile breadbasket that could reliably feed millions. This agricultural surplus provided the economic and logistical foundation for the Qin state to grow powerful and stable, directly enabling its military campaigns and its eventual conquest of the warring states, unifying China for the first time in 221 BC. The 10th secret is a philosophy of harmony. Duzhongyan stands in stark contrast to the modern philosophy of damming, which seeks to dominate a river by stopping it dead in its tracks. Lai Bing's system asks the water to bend, not break. It leverages natural forces instead of fighting them, creating a sustainable, dynamic partnership with the environment. It is a lesson in humility and intelligence, a stone and water dialogue that has nourished a civilization for more than 2 millennia, whispering that the most enduring power is not control but cooperation. The harmony of Duzhongyan's water channels stands in stark contrast to the lethal currents that flowed through the corridors of imperial power. For every public triumph of engineering, there existed a private, shadowy science dedicated to a singular, sinister purpose, the art of the undetectable death. This was the world of goo, a concept so terrifying it transcended mere poison to become a weapon of psychological warfare. Legends describe goo not as a simple substance, but as a monstrous familiar created by sealing venomous creatures, scorpions, snakes, centipedes, into a jar and letting them cannibalize each other. The sole survivor, having absorbed the toxins of all the others, would become a supernatural entity, a living poison that could be commanded to inflict a slow, wasting death upon a victim from afar. This spectral assassin was the ultimate tool for courtly intrigue. A rival minister would simply sicken and fade, his decline baffling physicians, while his enemy across the palace remained blameless. The terror of goo was not just in the death but in its mystery. It created a climate of profound paranoia where any unexplained illness could be seen as evidence of a hidden plot. This folklore, however, was rooted in a very real and sophisticated science. Ancient Chinese toxicologists, often working under the guise of alchemists or physicians, compiled meticulous catalogues of poisons. They documented the effects of arsenic, known as pishwang, noting its symptomless cumulative action. They studied aconite from wolfsbane, a plant that could cause paralysis and cardiac arrest, and mercury compounds that led to neurological decay. Texts detailed poisons derived from minerals, toxic mushrooms like the death cap, and the venom of certain frogs and insects. The knowledge of how to extract, concentrate, and administer these substances was a dark mirror to the healing arts, a secret discipline passed down in whispers. This pervasive fear fundamentally shaped society. Legal codes from the Tang dynasty onward specifically outlawed the preparation and use of goo, prescribing brutal punishments for those convicted. Social customs emerged in response. The elaborate practice of using silver hairpins and chopsticks to test food and drink became a routine precaution for the elite, a silent dinner ritual born of dread. Emperors employed entire corps of food tasters, and their meals were prepared under paranoid levels of security, with multiple officials sealing and documenting each step from kitchen to table. The 11th secret, therefore, is one of toxicology and terror. The legend of the goo potion reveals the paranoid undercurrent of a civilization obsessed with order. It shows how the fear of the unseen, the poison in the cup or the curse in the air, could dictate laws, mold personal habits, and turn the act of sharing a meal into a potential battlefield. In a world where power was absolute, the most dangerous threats were often the ones that left no trace, save for the cold, creeping suspicion in every shadowed hall. Against that dark undercurrent of whispered poisons, we find a place where sound was not a hidden threat, but a sacred bridge to the heavens. In the heart of Beijing stands the Temple of Heaven, a Ming Dynasty complex where architecture itself was tuned to conduct a celestial conversation. Its most famous acoustic secret is the Echo Wall, a smooth, circular enclosure surrounding the imperial vault of heaven. Built from meticulously laid bricks with a special glutinous rice mortar, its surface is flawlessly even. If one person whispers softly while facing the wall, another person over 100 meters away, with their ear similarly pressed to the curve, can hear every syllable with crystal clarity. This is the whispering gallery effect, where sound waves travel along the concave surface without scattering, a phenomenon understood and harnessed by 15th century builders to make a murmur carry the length of a football field. But the sonic wonders do not end there. On the approach to the main hall lie the triple sound stones. Stand on the first stone and clap your hands once. The sound echoes back to you a single, clear time. Step to the second stone and repeat the clap. This time, the echo returns twice. Move to the third stone, and a single hand clap will reverberate 3 distinct times before fading. This staggering effect is created by the precise distances between the stones and the surrounding walls. Each stone sits at a calculated focal point where sound waves bounce off specific architectural features, returning to the listener in staggered, measurable intervals. It is a built-in echo counter, a piece of stone that can measure the air itself. The climax of this acoustic journey is the Heaven's Center Stone, a single round slab at the very center of the circular upper terrace of the altar of heaven. Stand here and speak, even in a normal tone, and your own voice will seem to swell and surround you, resonating with a surprising, powerful depth. This amplification happens because the stone is the exact center of a vast, open circular space bordered by low walls. Sound waves radiating from that central point hit the surrounding balustrades and return simultaneously, creating a reinforcing wave that makes the speaker feel their voice is being lifted and supported by the very structure. These were not architectural accidents or happy quirks of physics. They were deliberate, engineered tools of imperial ritual. During the solemn winter solstice ceremony, the Son of Heaven would ascend to the altar of heaven to report on the year's governance and pray for divine favor. The acoustics served a profound spiritual and political purpose. When the emperor whispered his prayers at the echo wall, it was believed the sound would travel unimpeded directly to the ears of the celestial bureaucracy. The triple echoes from the stones could symbolize the heaven's acknowledgement, echoing his plea through the 3 realms of heaven, earth, and man. And when he stood on the heaven's center stone, the resonant amplification of his voice made him sound literally heaven-sent, his words booming with an otherworldly authority to the officials gathered below. The 12th secret is one of sacred engineering. The Temple of Heaven is not just a beautiful monument, it is a finely tuned instrument. Its builders manipulated space and sound to create a visceral, awe-inspiring experience, using the physics of reflection and resonance to blur the line between the human emperor and the divine realm, turning prayer into a palpable, audible phenomenon. While the Temple of Heaven used sound to reach the heavens, another invention harnessed mechanical rhythm to unleash a storm of death on Earth. This is the secret of the Chu-Ko-Nu, the repeating crossbow, a weapon so revolutionary in its design that it has been called the world's first machine gun. Its genius was not in raw power but in relentless, terrifying volume. The standard crossbow of the era was a formidable weapon, slow to load but capable of punching through armor at long range. The Chu-Ko-Nu took a different tactical path. It sacrificed that long-range punch for something arguably more devastating on the battlefield, a continuous, withering hail of bolts. The mechanism was a masterpiece of pragmatic engineering. Mounted on top of the weapon was a gravity-fed magazine, a box that could hold up to 10 or more short bolts. The operator did not need to reach for a new bolt each time. Instead, he worked a simple lever mechanism back and forth in a fluid, rapid motion. Pushing the lever forward drew the string back and cocked the weapon, while also dropping a new bolt from the magazine into the firing groove. Pulling the lever back released the shot. A trained soldier could cycle this action with blinding speed, unleashing all 10 bolts in as little as 15 seconds. Imagine standing across a battlefield from a line of soldiers equipped with these weapons. Instead of a single, whistling projectile, you faced a sudden, buzzing cloud of them, a wall of wood and iron that seemed to have no pause for reloading. This gave the Chu-Ko-Nu two overwhelming advantages. The first was tactical. It was the perfect weapon for defensive positions such as city walls or fortified gates. A small number of defenders could maintain a constant, suppressing fire, cutting down advancing infantry and breaking the momentum of a charge long before enemies could get close enough to use their own weapons effectively. The second advantage was psychological. That unending barrage created sheer terror and confusion. For an enemy force unfamiliar with the technology, it must have seemed like magic, as if the defenders possessed an inexhaustible quiver and superhuman speed. The sound alone, a relentless series of clicks and thwacks, would have been demoralizing. Of course, this devastating rate of fire came with serious trade-offs. The short bolts, fired from a relatively weak draw, had much less range and penetrating power than a standard crossbow. They were ineffective against heavy armor or fortified positions at a distance. The weapon was a specialist tool designed for a specific scenario to cut down massed, lightly armored troops at close to medium range. Precisely because of its battlefield-changing potential, the design of the Chu-Ko-Nu was a closely guarded state secret for centuries, from the Han Dynasty through to the Ming. Knowledge of its construction was restricted to imperial arsenals, and its use was likely controlled by elite units. Losing such a weapon to an enemy could shift the balance of power. Its true secret, however, is philosophical. The Chu-Ko-Nu represents a fundamental leap in design thinking. While most military innovation of the era focused on making a single shot more powerful, the anonymous inventors of this weapon asked a different question: how could we make the next shot come faster? They prioritized rate of fire over single impact force, automation over manual repetition. This principle of sustained, rapid discharge is the very soul of automatic weapons that would emerge over 1,000 years later. In the rhythmic clatter of its lever, we hear the early, relentless heartbeat of a new kind of warfare. The relentless rhythm of the Chu-Ko-Nu speaks to an ancient drive for innovation, even in destruction. Yet that same inventive spirit was also applied to the most fundamental human need, sustenance, giving rise to a delicacy that sounds like a contradiction in terms. The so-called century egg or 1,000-year egg is a culinary icon that often bewilders the uninitiated. Its appearance is dramatic, a jet-black, translucent egg white resembling polished obsidian, cradling a yolk that has deepened into a creamy gray-green paste. The aroma is pungent, earthy, and complex, To call it simply a rotten egg, however, is to miss a secret of profound gastronomic science. This transformation is not a product of decay, but of precise, controlled preservation. The process begins with fresh duck, chicken, or quail eggs. Each is carefully coated in a thick paste made from clay, wood ash, salt, quicklime, and often rice hulls for texture. This muddy blanket is the key. The eggs are then packed away, not buried in the earth as myth suggests, but stored in a cool place for several weeks to several months. Inside that sealed environment, a silent chemical symphony takes place. The alkaline ingredients in the paste, primarily the quicklime and ash, slowly seep through the eggshell's pores. This begins a process called alkaline hydrolysis. The high pH environment breaks down the proteins in the egg white and yolk at a molecular level, rearranging them into entirely new compounds. The egg white's proteins unravel and recoagulate into that smooth, dark, gelatinous solid, while the fats and proteins in the yolk undergo a similar transformation, concentrating its flavors and changing its color and texture to a rich, creamy paste. The salt from the paste penetrates as well, seasoning the egg from the inside out and further inhibiting the growth of spoilage bacteria. This was not originally a quest for exotic flavor, but a brilliant solution to a practical problem. In an era before refrigeration, preserving the highly perishable nutrition of eggs was a serious challenge. This method allowed families to store protein for months, creating a stable, long-lasting food source from a fragile one. Over time, what began as pure preservation evolved into a cherished culinary tradition. The century egg is rarely eaten alone. It is a flavor powerhouse used to elevate other dishes. Sliced over silken tofu with a drizzle of soy sauce and ginger, it provides a salty, umami-rich counterpoint. Chopped into congee or rice porridge, it melts into the hot grains, lending a deep, savory complexity that transforms a simple breakfast into something extraordinary. Its unique texture, that firm yet yielding jelly and the creamy yolk, is as important as its taste, offering a sensory experience highly valued in Chinese gastronomy. The 14th secret, therefore, is one of alchemy in the pantry. The 1,000-year egg is a testament to an ancient, intuitive understanding of food chemistry. It represents a culture that looked at preservation not just as a way to prevent spoilage, but as an opportunity to create entirely new dimensions of flavor and texture, turning the ordinary egg into an extraordinary and enduring delicacy. That same ingenuity which transformed food also turned its gaze upward, measuring time by the silent march of the stars. In the 11th century, during the Song dynasty, the city of Kaifeng was home to a mechanical wonder that seemed to capture the cosmos itself. This was the astronomical clock tower designed by the brilliant polymath Su Song. Rising over 40 feet high, it was not merely a timepiece, but a cathedral of precision engineering, a water-powered computer that plotted the heavens in real time. Its operation relied on 3 interlocking marvels. At its heart was a water-driven escapement mechanism, a concept that would become the soul of all mechanical clocks centuries later. A constant flow of water, meticulously regulated, filled a series of buckets on a large wheel. The genius was in the trip mechanism. Once a bucket reached a certain weight, it would trigger a release, allowing the wheel to rotate a precise, fixed amount before the next bucket was caught and held. This converted the steady stream of water into a series of measured mechanical ticks, providing the constant, reliable power needed to drive the entire tower's movements. This was the world's first known use of such an escapement, the foundational secret of accurate timekeeping. At the top of the tower sat an armillary sphere, a complex nest of bronze rings representing celestial circles. Powered by the clockwork below, this sphere rotated automatically, tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and key stars across the sky. It was an observatory that moved in perfect sync with the heavens themselves. Below this, inside the tower's enclosure, was a celestial globe, a star map in 3 dimensions. As the clockwork turned, this globe also rotated, mirroring the armillary sphere above. Officials could walk inside and see a precise model of the night sky at that exact moment, with constellations and planets correctly positioned, even in broad daylight or through cloudy skies. This was not built for public spectacle, but for a critical function of state. The Song Court relied on an accurate calendar for everything from agriculture to religious ceremonies. The clock tower's purpose was to reconcile two systems, the astronomical observations of the stars with the official water clock timekeeping of the palace. By having a machine that could demonstrate their perfect alignment, Su Song's tower provided irrefutable mechanical proof of the calendar's accuracy. It solidified the emperor's mandate by showing his governance was in literal harmony with the cosmos, but this pinnacle of engineering met a brutal end. In the early 12th century, the Jurchen armies invaded, sacking Kaifeng and capturing the imperial court. The magnificent clock tower was dismantled, either for its precious materials or simply destroyed in the chaos. The physical secrets of its gears and levers were scattered and lost. For centuries, it existed only as a legend, a tale of impossible mechanics. Its resurrection began with a single, precious manuscript. Su Song, in his wisdom, had authored a detailed book called New Design for an Armillary Clock. This text, preserved when the tower was not, contained exhaustive illustrations and descriptions of every component. Modern historians and engineers studying these pages have come to understand the sheer sophistication of what was lost. They have built working replicas that confirm its feasibility, marveling at the ingenuity of its water balance system and its intricate gear trains. The 15th secret is one of tragic grandeur. Su Song's star clock represents a zenith of scientific ambition, a machine that married hydrological power to celestial observation with breathtaking elegance. Its destruction is a haunting reminder of how fragile knowledge can be, and its recovery from a manuscript is a testament to the enduring power of a single mind to speak across a millennium, sharing secrets of time and space that were almost erased forever. The precision of Su Song's clock tower mirrored a cosmic order made manifest on Earth, in the very streets of the capital itself. At the heart of Beijing lies a complex so vast and meticulously planned that it is less a palace and more a three-dimensional doctrine of absolute power. The Forbidden City is an architectural manifesto, its every stone and color a deliberate symbol in a silent language of imperial authority. Its most fundamental secret is its unshakable axis. The entire complex is aligned on a strict north-south line, a physical representation of the emperor's sacred role as the conduit between heaven and earth. The Son of Heaven stood at the literal center of this axis, mediating between the celestial realm in the north and the mortal world to the south. This wasn't just a convenient layout, it was a theological statement built in wood and marble. This symbolic language extended to the very numbers used in its construction. The Forbidden City is famously said to contain 9,999.5 rooms. Why not 10,000? In Chinese cosmology, the number 10,000 represented the totality of the cosmos, a perfection reserved for the heavenly palace of the Jade Emperor. The earthly emperor, in a show of humility and hierarchy, could only approach that perfection. The number 9, however, was his exclusive domain. Pronounced Ju, it is a homophone for the word meaning everlasting or longevity. It became the imperial number. You find it everywhere, from the 9 rows of door studs on the most important gates to the mythical creatures lining the roof ridges of the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Even the mythical half-room, often said to be a small storage space, served to symbolically keep the emperor just beneath divine perfection. Walking through the Forbidden City was a carefully choreographed experience of psychological intimidation. You entered from the south through the Meridian Gate, a massive, forbidding structure that immediately conveyed overwhelming scale. From there, you crossed a vast courtyard and passed through the Gate of Supreme Harmony, only to be confronted with an even larger, more awe-inspiring space. At the far end, elevated on a three-tiered marble terrace, sat the Hall of Supreme Harmony, the throne room itself. This progression of increasingly monumental spaces was designed to diminish any visitor, official or foreign envoy. By the time you stood before the emperor, you had traversed a kilometer of architectural dominance, your sense of self deliberately compressed by the sheer grandeur surrounding you. Every decorative element reinforced this message. The dragon, symbol of imperial power and the young masculine force, coils on every column, stares from every ceiling, and is carved into every stone walkway. The color scheme was a strict code. Glazed yellow tiles, a color associated with the center of the cosmos and the emperor alone, roofed all the major halls. The walls were painted a deep, auspicious red, representing fortune and joy, but also fire and the south protecting the compound. The principles of Feng Shui governed the entire design. Artificial hills were built to the north to block malignant influences, while the Golden Water River was channeled through the complex in a serpentine path to gather and retain beneficial Kai. There were no accidents, only intention. From the number of statues on a roof to the shade of pigment on a beam, the Forbidden City was a machine for manufacturing awe, a physical universe built to convince everyone within it that the man sitting in the Hall of Supreme Harmony was not just a ruler, but the very axis upon which the world turned. Yet the rigid order of the Forbidden City could not suppress a deeper, more volatile current flowing through the countryside. For centuries, in the shadows of villages and in the whispers of peasants, thrived a secret society that wielded a spiritual weapon against the very throne. This was the White Lotus, a clandestine Buddhist sect whose true power lay not in armies, but in a single, explosive idea. Their core secret doctrine was a promise of cosmic deliverance, the belief in the imminent arrival of Maitreya, the future Buddha. In their teachings, the present world was a corrupt and decaying age, a direct reflection of the failing dynasty in power. But Maitreya would descend to cleanse the earth, overthrow the unjust rulers, and establish a pure, radiant paradise for his followers. This belief, known as millennialism, transformed faith into a potent engine of political rebellion. The promise of a golden age just over the horizon made the hardships of the present not only bearable, but a sign that the great upheaval was near. This made the White Lotus a perpetual, shadowy threat to imperial authority. Their greatest danger was their ability to patiently wait and then suddenly ignite. They fueled some of the largest rebellions in Chinese history. In the 14th century, White Lotus ideology helped spark the Red Turban Rebellion, a massive popular uprising that ultimately contributed to the collapse of the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty. Centuries later, in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the White Lotus Rebellion itself erupted against the king, a brutal, sprawling conflict that drained the empire's treasury and exposed deep cracks in its administration. The society survived and operated for so long because of its intricate, cell-like structure and secretive practices. It was not a single, centralized organization, but a loose network of local congregations connected by shared beliefs and symbols. They communicated through secret codes, often embedded within seemingly innocent folk songs or Buddhist sutras. Initiation rituals bound members with solemn oaths, creating a parallel community of trust that existed outside official scrutiny. They used special hand signs, coded phrases, and the symbolic imagery of the lotus flower itself, which represented purity rising from muddy water, just as their new world would rise from the corruption of the old. At its heart, the White Lotus demonstrates a profound historical secret: how folk religion could become the most powerful vehicle for political dissent. When the government was seen as losing the mandate of heaven, when taxes were crushing and famine spread, the society offered more than solace. It offered a divine blueprint for revolution. The emperor in Beijing claimed to be the son of heaven, but the White Lotus whispered of a coming Buddha who would prove him a false idol. Their endurance reveals that the most formidable challenge to a rigidly ordered empire was not a foreign army, but a patient, hopeful story told in the dark, a story that promised the world could be born again. Against the volatile currents of peasant rebellion, the imperial court maintained its authority through objects of astonishing permanence and beauty. To hold power, one must also hold the attention of the gods, and for that, the ancient Chinese developed a technology of sacred metal. The secret to the breathtaking bronze vessels of the Shang and Zhou dynasties lies in a technique so demanding it bordered on alchemy, known as piece mold casting. This was not a simple matter of pouring molten metal into a hollow form. It was a months-long ritual of earth, fire, and precision, a secret so closely guarded it was a monopoly of the state itself. The process began not with metal but with clay. Master artisans would sculpt a full-size, detailed model of the intended vessel, capturing every future curve and decorative motif in damp earth. Once this model was dried and hardened, the true magic began. Craftsmen would carefully press slabs of fine clay against the model's surface, section by section. They might divide the vessel logically, creating separate molds for the body, the legs, the handles. Each of these clay slabs became a negative impression, a perfect mirror of one portion of the design. These individual sections were then carefully fired into sturdy ceramic tiles. Here came the critical, destructive step. The original clay model inside was scraped away, leaving the hollow interior of the reassembled ceramic mold shell. But the artisans did not stop there. To create the vessel's final thickness, they would shave down the surface of that original model before destroying it, and then use this shrunken core as a new insert. When the ceramic molds were reassembled around this smaller core, a narrow, precise gap was left between them, the exact space where molten bronze would eventually flow. The most stunning secret of all was how the intricate designs were transferred. Those hypnotic, swirling patterns and the glaring, mythical Tauti masks were not carved into the bronze after casting. They were meticulously sculpted in reverse, directly into the inner surface of each ceramic mold section. Every spiral, every dragon's eye, every geometric band was a negative space waiting to be filled with liquid metal. When the searing bronze, heated to over 1,000 degrees Celsius, was poured into the gap, it captured every minute detail of those carved molds. After the metal cooled and the ceramic molds were broken away, the vessel emerged with its designs already born from the fire, crisp and sharp. This piece mold method was revolutionary because it allowed for complexity impossible with simpler techniques. It enabled the casting of elaborate handles, protruding animal heads, and dense, layered decoration that covered the entire surface. The inscriptions found on many vessels detailing the reason for their creation or commemorating a military victory were also cast directly into the metal using this same method, making the vessel an eternal, unalterable document. But these objects were far more than artistic triumphs. They were the central technology of spiritual and political power. The most important vessels were used in ceremonies of ancestor worship, holding ritual food and wine offered to the spirits of the departed. By feeding the ancestors, the living ruler demonstrated his piety and, in return, secured their divine favor and legitimacy for his reign. Controlling the production of these sacred objects was as vital as controlling an army. The knowledge of piece mold casting was a state secret, protected by guilds of master craftsmen who lived and worked in closely supervised workshops. The bronze itself, made from scarce copper and tin, was a strategic resource. To possess these vessels was to visibly hold the mandate of heaven, to communicate with the divine, and to project an aura of unchallengeable authority. In the silent gleam of a 3,000-year-old bronze ding or cauldron, we see not just a container, but a container of secrets, a frozen moment where spiritual belief, political will, and material science were poured together into a single, enduring form. The sacred bronze vessels spoke a language of divine authority, but another text from the same ancient world taught a language of earthly power so potent it never goes out of style. We have all heard the famous quotes from Sun Tzu's The Art of War, like "Know your enemy and know yourself." But the book's deepest secret, its 19th, is not about clever tactics for the battlefield. It is a philosophy for winning the war before the first arrow is ever fired. Sun Tzu's ultimate goal was victory without battle, a triumph achieved through such perfect positioning and understanding that conflict becomes unnecessary. This is the core of strategic deception. He wrote of using the normal force to engage the enemy, to present a familiar, expected front. But victory comes from the extraordinary force, the unexpected move held in reserve. You meet your opponent's strength with a conventional formation, drawing their focus, while your real winning stroke comes from a direction they never considered, at a moment they believed was safe. This demands more than trickery. It requires what Sun Tzu called foreknowledge, a term built on espionage. He devoted an entire chapter to the use of spies, arguing that no army could succeed without a deep, intimate understanding of the enemy's plans, morale, and weaknesses. This foreknowledge was not just military intelligence, it was a psychological map of the opposing commander's mind. The most elegant expression of this philosophy is the concept of shi, often translated as strategic power or momentum. Imagine a river, placid and calm, flowing through a valley. Then, a brilliant commander builds a dam, not to stop the water, but to gather it, to position it high above the town below. He does not fight the river, he aligns with its nature and uses its own weight. She is the art of positioning your forces like that pent-up water, arranging circumstances so that when you finally act, your victory is as natural and overwhelming as the dam's release. The force is not in your soldiers' muscles, but in the steepness of the hill you have them charged down. It is in the narrow pass you have lured the enemy into, where their numbers become a weakness. The battle is won not by the clash of swords, but by the setup that made the clash inevitable in your favor. History is filled with applications of this silent art. During the Warring States period, the general Sun Bin, a descendant of Sun Tzu, famously used these principles against his rival Pang Huan. In one campaign, Sun Bin ordered his army to light 100,000 cooking fires on the first night, 50,000 on the second, and only 20,000 on the third. To Pang Huan's scouts, this appeared as mass desertion, a collapsing army. Lured by this deception of weakness, Pang Huan rushed ahead with a light force to finish them off, only to be ambushed and destroyed by Sun Bin's fully intact, strategically positioned troops. The normal force was the diminishing fires. The extraordinary force was the hidden army waiting in perfect shi. Today, the echoes of these principles are everywhere. In modern business, a company might use the normal force of a standard product launch to engage competitors, while its extraordinary force is a secret, patented technology that redefines the market overnight. In politics, a campaign might publicly debate one issue while its real shi is a ground game of voter mobilization in overlooked districts. The philosophy of winning without fighting translates to negotiating from a position of such strength that the other side sees surrender as their best option. Sun Tzu's secret is not a manual for violence, but a treatise on intelligent influence. It teaches that the highest form of power is not the strength to destroy, but the wisdom to arrange the world so that victory flows naturally, like water finding the path of least resistance, leaving your opponent with nowhere to stand and no desire to fight. While Sun Tzu wrote of strategic positioning, an entire civilization mastered the art of positioning themselves at the very crossroads of the world. The Silk Road is often pictured as a grand highway where Chinese silk flowed west and Roman gold flowed east. But the true secret of its operation was not a road at all, it was a people. The real power brokers were the Sogdians, a network of merchants from the fertile valleys of Central Asia, whose homeland centered on the legendary city of Samarkand. Their genius was not in owning the caravans, but in owning the connections between them. They built the Silk Road's hidden nervous system, the Sogdian strategy was diaspora. Instead of undertaking risky round-trip journeys themselves, they established permanent communities, tiny outposts of Samarkand all along the trade routes. From the bustling markets of Dunhuang to the very capital of Chang'an itself, Sogdian quarters thrived. These were self-sufficient enclaves with their own leaders, temples, and customs, functioning as commercial consulates, banks, and way stations. A merchant from Persia could arrive in a Sogdian town in China, deposit his goods with a trusted Sogdian banker, receive a letter of credit, and return home, while his Sogdian partner handled the local sale, the purchase of Chinese goods, and the arrangement of their transport back west. They were the original global middlemen, fluent in the languages, customs, and currencies of a dozen cultures, translating not just words but entire commercial intentions. Their influence went far beyond bales of silk and sacks of spice. The Sogdians were cultural couriers. As they moved, they carried their faiths with them. They were largely responsible for introducing Zoroastrianism, with its cosmic struggle between light and dark, into the Chinese religious landscape. They brought Manichaeism, a faith that blended Christian, Buddhist, and Zoroastrian ideas, and Nestorian Christianity, an eastern branch of the faith. In Tang Dynasty Chang'an, you could find Zoroastrian fire temples and Nestorian churches standing not far from Buddhist pagodas, a direct result of Sogdian settlement. They brought new musical instruments like the lute-like pipa, which became central to Chinese classical music, and their vibrant, swirling artistic styles influenced Tang pottery and painting. The cosmopolitan glamour of the Tang dynasty, often seen as China's golden age, was in many ways a Sogdian creation. Look at the famous Tang ceramic figurines of court ladies. Their plump, fashionable faces are sometimes adorned with what historians call Sogdian makeup, a distinctive beauty mark on the forehead. The vibrant, swirling designs on their robes often mimic Central Asian textiles. Even the Tang imperial family itself was intertwined with this network. Emperor Taizong, one of China's greatest rulers, employed Sogdian generals and advisors. The dazzling tolerance and international flair of the Tang court was made possible by these savvy intermediaries who made the foreign familiar and the exotic accessible. So the 20th secret reframes our entire understanding of that ancient trade route. The Silk Road was not a Chinese monopoly or a simple bilateral exchange. It was a decentralized, cosmopolitan web, spun and maintained by the Sogdians. They proved that the most powerful force in history is sometimes not the empire that produces the goods, but the network that understands how to move them, and in doing so, quietly moves the world. The vibrant tapestry of the Silk Road, woven by merchants and diplomats, carried more than just silks and spices. It also carried death, and in one of history's darkest convergences, a grim secret of Chinese-influenced warfare may have unlocked the door for a catastrophe that reshaped the world. This brings us to the 21st secret, a stark lesson in unintended consequences. During a brutal siege in the 1340s, the Mongol army, whose military strategies were deeply informed by Chinese siegecraft, reportedly resorted to a horrific new tactic at the Black Sea port of Kaffa. As their own ranks began to suffer from a mysterious and devastating illness, they made a calculated, ruthless decision. They used their catapults not to hurl stones, but to launch the plague-infected corpses of their own dead soldiers over the walls of the Genos trading fortress. The mechanics of this act are debated by historians. Could a corpse catapulted into a city truly start an epidemic? The answer lies in the vectors. The Black Death was primarily spread by fleas living on black rats. An infected corpse would still be covered in these fleas. Launching it into a crowded, besieged city would not just terrify the defenders, it would release a cloud of infected fleas into a new population of rats, creating an instant breeding ground for the disease. The Genos traders trapped inside Kaffa, already weakened and living in close quarters, had no defense. As the sickness raged within the walls, those who could fled. They scrambled onto their trade galleys, desperate to escape the dying city. Unknowingly, they carried stowaways, rats and fleas infected with Yersinia pestis, the plague bacterium. Their ships became floating tombs that sailed straight for the heart of Europe, making landfall in ports like Messina in Sicily and Genoa itself. From there, the Black Death exploded across the continent, ultimately killing an estimated 1/3 of Europe's population. The Siege of Kaffa stands as a prime, chilling candidate for the deliberate event that introduced the pandemic to the West. This act of biological siegecraft hints at a deeper, more disturbing understanding. While the ancient Chinese did not have germ theory, they possessed a pragmatic knowledge of contagion. Medical texts observed that certain diseases could transfer from one person to another, and they understood that proximity to the sick and the dead carried risk. The Mongols, ruthless pragmatists who absorbed the military technologies of every culture they conquered, would have seen the sickness in their camp not just as a tragedy, but as a potential weapon. Their decision to weaponize the corpses displays a terrifyingly logical extension of Chinese siege philosophy, which emphasized exploiting any weakness, any element of the environment to break an enemy's will. In this case, the environment itself was disease, so the 21st secret is one of catastrophic connection. It suggests that a tactic born from a blend of Mongol ruthlessness and strategic thinking influenced by Chinese warfare may have inadvertently triggered the deadliest pandemic in recorded history. It is a stark reminder that a secret of war unleashed upon the world can have consequences that echo for centuries, turning a single act of siegecraft into a pivot point for all of human civilization. But even the most devastating weapon cannot erase a name, and one name in Chinese history stands alone, demanding a language all its own. Empress Wu Zetian, the only woman to ever rule China in her own right, faced a problem no emperor before her had encountered. The very written language she used to govern was built by and for a male-dominated Confucian tradition. Her most intimate secret was not a weapon or a treaty, but a single, radical stroke of the brush. She invented a new Chinese character exclusively for her own name. The character was Zhao, and it was a masterpiece of symbolic propaganda. She constructed it by combining existing elements with profound meaning. At the top, she placed the characters for sun and moon side by side. Below them, she set the character for sky or heaven, and beneath all of this, she placed the character for empty or void. The message was breathtaking in its ambition. The sun and moon represented the twin luminaries that ruled the cosmos, the masculine and feminine principles in balance. The sky above showed her dominion was universal, celestial, and the empty vessel below, this was the most audacious part. It suggested she was the vessel through which heaven's light shone upon the earth, but also that she herself was the open space ready to be filled with ultimate authority. This was not a mere signature, it was a cryptographic seal encoding her claim to the mandate of heaven. Controlling the written word in a logographic culture was the ultimate secret of power. Words were not just sounds, they were concepts made visible. By creating a new character for her name, Wu Zetian was literally rewriting reality, carving a space for herself in the very fabric of thought. She did not stop there. As part of her sweeping political reforms, she commissioned the invention of over a dozen other new characters. These were not random creations. They often replaced common characters used in official documents and inscriptions with more complex or auspicious variants. For example, the character for country was modified to include a symbol for ruler inside its borders, visually reinforcing the idea of a centralized state. The character for beginning was altered to incorporate an element meaning heavenly virtue. This systematic linguistic engineering served a clear purpose: to break the intellectual hold of the old Confucian scholarly elite and create a new, visual vocabulary of power that was uniquely hers. Every time a document was written, a stele was carved, or a decree was issued using these new characters, it was a silent act of propaganda. It reminded everyone that the world now operated under a new set of rules, authored by a woman who dared to place the sun and moon above the empty throne. This linguistic rebellion was her shield against a world that said she could not rule. By mastering the secret of the character, she did not just change her name, she attempted to change the mindset of an empire, one deliberate stroke at a time. Wu Zetian's attempt to rewrite language was an act of supreme control, but across the vast steppes and mountain passes, another form of power was being traded in a much humbler package. The 23rd secret reveals that one of the world's most beloved drinks was also one of its most reliable forms of money. On the windswept frontiers of the empire, in the highlands of Tibet and the grasslands of Mongolia, tea did not come in loose leaves. It was pressed into dense, solid bricks, and these unassuming blocks became the hidden engine of a borderland economy, serving a purpose far beyond simple refreshment. For the nomadic peoples of the interior, whose diet consisted almost entirely of meat, dairy, and animal fats, the compressed tea brick was a biological necessity. The potent, vitamin-rich infusion brewed from these bricks was the only major source of plant-based nutrients available to them. It aided digestion, provided essential vitamins like vitamin C that were absent from their meals and became as fundamental to survival as grain or salt. This created an insatiable demand, a dependency that the Chinese state was quick to recognize and masterfully exploit. The tea was processed and pressed under immense pressure, often mixed with binding agents into bricks that could weigh a kilogram or more. They were incredibly durable, easily stacked, and perfectly suited for long journeys on camelback. Their uniformity made them an ideal currency. A full brick could be used for large transactions, like purchasing a horse or a parcel of goods. But the system had built-in flexibility. Since the brick was solid, a trader could simply break off a smaller piece, a chunk or a sliver, to make change for a smaller purchase, much like snapping off a piece of chocolate bar. This created a tangible, divisible money supply in a region where metallic coins were scarce and impractical. There was even a sophisticated grading system. The finest tea leaves, often from specific renowned mountain regions, were used to create top-tier bricks for the elite and for diplomatic gifts. Lower grades, made from older leaves and stems, circulated as the common currency of the herders and merchants. The value was understood by everyone, embedded in the texture, the aroma, and the stamp of the producer pressed into the brick's surface. This secret economic system did more than facilitate barter, it created a powerful geopolitical bond. By controlling the production and distribution of tea bricks, China effectively tied the nomadic tribes to its economic sphere. The tribes needed the tea to live, and China needed what the tribes produced, particularly their strongest and swiftest horses. This mutual dependency crystallized into the official tea and horse trade, a state-managed exchange system that operated for centuries. At designated border markets, Chinese officials would carefully assess the quality of Tibetan or Mongol horses. A strong, battle-ready steed might be worth dozens of high-grade tea bricks. This trade was a matter of national security for China, as it supplied the cavalry mounts essential for defending the empire's long northern frontier against, ironically, other nomadic confederations. The humble tea brick, therefore, was a tool of astonishing versatility. It was pharmacy, grocery store, and bank vault all in one. It wove the highland nomads into an economic web centered on China, not through conquest but through cultivated need and clever commerce. The next time you hold a tea bag, consider its ancestor, a brick of leaves so powerful it could buy an army's worth of horses and sustain entire civilizations on the roof of the world. Beneath the scorching sun of the Turpan Depression, one of the hottest and driest places on Earth, life flourished against every logical odds. Here, the 24th secret is not a monument you can see, but a hidden river you can hear. It flows in absolute darkness through a labyrinth of hand-dug tunnels known as the Carrez system, a subterranean city of water that turned a blistering desert into a cradle of civilization. This was not a simple well or a canal. It was a masterpiece of communal engineering, a secret network of underground aqueducts that stretched for thousands of miles beneath the sand, bringing life to the Silk Road's most punishing stretches. The genius of the Carrez lay in its elegant, gravity-fed design. It began high in the foothills of the mighty Tian Shan Mountains, where melting snow and rare rainfall would seep into the vast alluvial fans, creating hidden reservoirs of groundwater. The builders' ancient Ica communities would first locate this precious subsurface water. Then they began the back-breaking, generational work of excavation. They dug a mother well, a deep vertical shaft that reached the water table. From the bottom of this well, teams of diggers would then begin carving a gently sloping tunnel, just wide enough for a person to crawl through, heading downhill toward their distant oasis settlement. The slope was everything meticulously calculated. It had to be steep enough to keep the water flowing steadily, but gentle enough to prevent erosion and collapse. Every 20 to 50 meters along the tunnel's path, they dug another vertical shaft down from the surface. These shafts served a triple purpose. During construction, they provided multiple points of access, allowing teams to dig toward each other and remove the excavated earth. Once the system was operational, they acted as vital ventilation shafts, preventing deadly gases from building up in the tunnels. And for centuries after, they served as maintenance hatches, allowing descendants to descend, clear silt, and repair the walls, ensuring the water never stopped. The result was a water supply of miraculous reliability and purity. By flowing underground, the water was completely shielded from the relentless desert sun. In a place where surface water would evaporate in hours, the Carrez lost virtually none. It was also protected from the choking dust storms that swept the basin, arriving cool, clean, and ready to drink at the surface outlet, often emptying into a communal pond that became the heart of the village. This Persian-inspired technology, perfected by local ingenuity, created a sustainable oasis ecology. The water-nurtured groves of famously sweet Turpan grapes, fields of wheat, and orchards that turn the desert floor into a sudden, shocking emerald green. These oases were not just survival hubs, they were essential way stations on the northern Silk Road, providing caravans with a guaranteed, abundant source of water and food after weeks crossing the terrifying Taklamakan Desert. The Carrez system represents a different kind of ancient secret, one of collective patience over imperial decree. No single emperor ordered it built. It was the work of generations of a community investing in a future they would never see, digging in the dark with simple tools, guided by a profound understanding of the land's hidden anatomy. Each vertical shaft is a testament to that persistence, a breathing hole for a river that gave a desert its soul. The patient, flowing water of the Carrez system whispers the final and perhaps most profound secret of all. It is a secret not of engineering but of being. The ancient Taoist sages called it Wu Wai, a term often mistranslated as non-action or doing nothing. Its true meaning is far more subtle and powerful. Wu Wai is effortless action, the art of aligning your efforts so perfectly with the natural current of events that you achieve maximum effect with minimal strain. Think of the water in those underground tunnels. It does not fight the desert, it does not rage against the rock. It simply finds the path of least resistance, wearing down obstacles over millennia not by force but by persistent, graceful presence. That is Wu Wai. It is the difference between a novice carpenter sawing frantically against the wood grain and a master whose smooth, fluid strokes seem to guide the saw through the timber as if by magic. The master understands the wood's nature and works with it, not against it. This philosophy became the hidden operating system for ideal governance. the greatest ruler, according to Taoist texts like the Tao Te Ching, governs so lightly and in such harmony with the people's needs that after a great accomplishment, the citizens would say, "We did this ourselves." The ruler's Wu Wei was in creating the conditions for success, then stepping back to let the natural order flourish, like a gardener who prepares the soil and waters the plants but does not pull on the shoots to make them grow faster. You can see this principle embodied in the slow, deliberate movements of Tai Chi. A practitioner does not meet an oncoming force with rigid, opposing strength. Instead, they yield, redirecting the opponent's own energy and momentum to neutralize the attack. The action is soft, circular, and supremely effective, turning aggression into emptiness. In our own lives, Wu Wei offers a powerful antidote to modern stress. It is the secret of knowing when to push and when to let go. Imagine you are stuck in a traffic jam. The Wu Wei response is not to clench the steering wheel, honk fruitlessly, and rage against the circumstance you cannot change. It is to accept the situation, turn on some music, and use the time for reflection. You have redirected your energy from a futile struggle to a productive calm. It is about discerning the flow of events. Sometimes the flow requires vigorous swimming, other times it is wiser to float and let the current carry you to a better position. This is not passive resignation, but intelligent engagement. A farmer practices Wu Wei when he plants seeds in the correct season, tends them according to their nature, and then waits patiently for harvest. He cannot force the crops to grow, but his aligned, timely actions make the bounty possible. The 25th secret, then, is a timeless key to power and peace. Wu Wei teaches that the universe has a rhythm, a Tao. Our greatest struggles often come from paddling upstream against that current. True effectiveness and true tranquility comes from learning to read the water, to adjust our strokes, and to move with a grace that makes even the most difficult tasks appear effortless. It is the art of flowing like the hidden river, shaping the world not by force, but by perfect, persistent alignment. From the deep hum of Zhang Heng's seismoscope to the silent philosophy of Wu Wei, these 25 secrets paint a portrait far richer than any textbook summary. We have witnessed a civilization that could cast a sword to defy millennia, design a city to sleep beneath a lake, and build a clock to track the stars. We have walked the line between the tangible and the intangible, from the lethal mechanics of the repeating crossbow to the psychological warfare of Sun Tzu's strategic deception. This was not a monolithic empire frozen in tradition, but a dynamic crucible. Here, the quest for immortality accidentally birthed gunpowder, the fear of poison-shaped dining customs, and a peasant's faith could challenge the throne itself. Each secret, whether etched in bronze, whispered in a temple's echo, or flowing in a hidden desert river, reveals a different facet of the same truth. Ancient China was a world of relentless innovation, deep spirituality, and breathtakingly complex politics all intertwined. To understand these lost and hidden aspects is to exchange a flat, faded tapestry for a vivid, multidimensional landscape. History becomes not a list of dates and emperors, but a living story of human ingenuity, fear, ambition, and wonder. So we leave you with a question: which of these 25 secrets reshaped your view of the ancient world the most? Was it the engineering marvel of Duzhongyan, the silent terror of the Gu poison, or the elegant patience of Wu Wei? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the shadows of history, be sure to subscribe. There are always more mysteries waiting to be uncovered.